Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
In this course, we would like to look at how the Science Technology Society studies began and in what context. Science and Technology Society studies lie at the intersection of philosophy, history and sociology. These disciplines initially focused on the internal world of science. Philosophy on epistemological issues regarding what counts as knowledge and justification of knowledge claims according to empiricist or rationalist theories of knowledge, which we will see what these theories are. History focused on dynamics of science in terms of succession of ideas and theories, and sociology conceptualized science in terms of an institution with its own ethos, whose goal is extension of certified knowledge according to impersonal criteria of logic and evidence. The sociology of science was popularized by Robert Merton in the United States, and this also is part of sociology of knowledge, which was popularized by Karl Mannheim in Europe. Now, STS studies lie at the intersection of philosophy, history and sociology. The context of origin of STS studies in the Western societies. According to David Edge, Western societies, Britain and other European societies, Science and Technology Society studies were initiated in 1960s for educational considerations that the students of science should be exposed to liberal education so that they know how the society functions and the role as scientists and engineers in the society. 2 is rational basis for science policy making. And in the context of US, the urge to democratize science against backdrop of Vietnam War, civil rights movement and environmental movements and feminist movement, the STS studies took shape in US. In the context of developing countries, also we see a lot of scientific technological activities today, and these developing countries which achieved political freedom from colonial rule after the Second World War wanted to achieve economic development by deploying science and technology as means. This can be clearly seen in the case of India, which gained in 1947 from British rule. The perception that scientific knowledge would create consciousness about nature and the universe and thus usher in scientific temper, acquisition of the ability to apply logic and evidence to carry out social, economic and political life in the population. Second, the scientific knowledge in the form of modern science based technology can be deployed in production, in agriculture and industry to achieve economic development. Soon after acquiring political independence from colonial rule, the Government of India announced the Scientific Policy Resolution 1958 to achieve the above mentioned goals. Development of science and technology, education and expanding and establishing new scientific institutions and R&D organizations were undertaken in India after the 1958 policy resolution was adopted. As I said, the first scientific policy was the Scientific Policy Resolution of 1958. The second one was Technology Policy Statement of 1983, and these two policies reflect the beliefs about science and technology and their role in economic development. Science and Technology Policy of 2000 and Science, Technology and Innovation Policy of 2013 to some extent reinforce the earlier policies, but also recognize explicitly the need to innovate in the context of WTO provisions on IPRs. Basically, The motivation to encourage science and technology has been to use science and technology for economic and social development. STA studies in India were initiated because of three considerations. One, review of science policies. Second, science movements which were started as a reaction to development mediated by modern science and technology. And three, science popularization and public engagement with science and technology. We will discuss these issues later on in the course. Now, to begin with, if you look at evolution of human society, we will see how this evolution really changed both the environment and the society simultaneously. We will also look at some of the definitions of science and technology in this course to start in this lecture to start with. Human society evolved by interacting with nature, so by interaction among human beings, by men and women in the society. Historically, human beings gain knowledge about nature by experience, observation and sharing of this knowledge with the members of the community, and develop techniques in each stage of evolution on the basis of the empirical experience. For example, hunting and food gathering, pastoralism, agriculture were the main stages through which the human society passed through before becoming industrial society, and these stages depended on animate source of energy for carrying out various activities. Whereas in the case of industrial societies, the source of energy shifted from animate sources to inanimate sources such as coal and electricity. This is what marks industrial revolution because of the shift in the use of energy from animate to inanimate sources. Now, let us see how society, technology and science are related. Society is a precondition for any kind of scientific or technological activities, because society provides human resources like personnel, cultural resources like language, beliefs, values and meanings, and physical resources like funds, space, infrastructure and public support. And society also accords legitimacy to scientific activity, technological activity, because society thinks that the scientific and technological activities are worth pursuing because they may have indirect benefits to the society. Now, before we go on to what modern science is, let us look at what technology is. In the earlier slide, I put first technology and then science. If you look at history of human society, technology predates modern science. Before modern science became an alternative knowledge system to theological knowledge in Europe, several techniques were developed in different societies across the world. In ancient civilizations and cultures, techniques were developed on the basis of experience and empirical knowledge. For example, techniques of irrigation, temple construction, temple architecture, making bows and arrows, and Persian wheels to lift are some of the examples of the knowledge that societies which did not have modern science used in achieving the magnificent feats. Modern science took roots in the 16th century Western Europe. It was inaugurated by a scientific revolution, and the scientific revolution was ushered in by Copernicus, who proposed that we should replace geocentric theory of universe by heliocentric theory of universe, which placed the sun in the center of the universe, and also he argued that it is earth which revolves around the sun and not the other way around. And next, Galileo was the one who established analytic synthetic methods and also insisted upon measuring observations so that one can see the variations. Newton was the one who discovered gravity and also proposed laws of motion, right. These three and contributions of these three persons and later others by Kepler and so on ushered in what we call today the scientific revolution, which changed the entire way of knowing the world from a theological system of knowledge which was based on faith and revelation. Here the scientific revolution insisted that one should observe and one should use logic in arriving at conclusions about the world. Then what are the components of technology? Technology at least consists of the following components. One, the artifact, that is the gadget itself or the instrument itself, which is used in various contexts. For example, the motor car is a gadget, a refrigerator is a gadget, and similarly bow and arrows or in the far past were some kind of gadgets or artifacts. And software, knowledge underlying the construction of the artifact. For example, if one wants to construct a bow and arrow, one should also have some knowledge about the material that is used in constructing the bow, making the arrows. Similarly, in constructing a refrigerator, we require knowledge of materials, knowledge of the kind of the idea that this refrigerator must maintain certain degree of temperature and so on. The third is orgware is the social organization that is required to implement the technology, in the sense that if it's not enough to have an aircraft, you also should have an organization which ensures that aircrafts fly safely and land safely. That is why we have airport authorities which regulate air traffic, which make sure that the landing takes place smoothly and the aircrafts are maintained in such a way that do not develop any faults. Then there is another, all technologies have three essential features. One is the design. The design means a particular gadget, a particular artifact is produced in such a way that it has to do the function for which it is designed. That is called functional aspect of design. The second aspect is the aesthetic aspect of technology. It means in terms of color, size, shape, which appeals to human being. Recent studies show that apart from this, the design also incorporates power relations, exclusion and inclusion. That is, who will have access to this particular technology or artifact, who will not be able to have access to this, and in what context this technology operates, and also it is associated with meanings of what it means to have this particular artifact in social life. So that is why if really one wants to understand the consequences of technology, one should unpack the design. And today's context, modern technology and modern science interact with each other, about which we will see later on in the course. The factors that shape technology in a society and its consequences are as follows. The factors that shape technology are economic factors, which are basically efficiency and productivity. One employs new techniques to improve efficiency and productivity. Second, social factors that shape technologies. Social institutions sometimes also create conditions for development of new technologies. For example, the development of banking system to facilitate financial activity is an important kind of technology. Then political institutions also sometimes create conditions for the emergence of new technologies. One is power, because politics has got to do with distribution of power. And if you look at most of the military technology, it's developed because of the need to establish a country's power over others, or to demonstrate the country's powers over other countries' powers. For example, the atomic bomb has no other function except the political function. Then cultural factors we include in culture all the creative activities like painting, music, art, and science and technology. Cultural factors also sometimes lead to new technologies. For example, if you look at the music instruments today, they are really, electronics have been built into these musical instruments today, and today's instruments or musical instruments are very much dependent on electronics. And culture also includes systems of meanings, in the sense that sometimes the technologies which are created change the systems of meanings. And the existing knowledge also is useful sometimes in creating new technologies. For example, converting a manually operated boat by using a diesel engine is an example of using existing knowledge to improve the artifacts. The consequences of technology are also economic, social, political, cultural, and of course environmental. So, for example, by using efficient techniques and efficient methods, we generate wealth, and of course the distribution of wealth in society is a political question, how it is distributed. Obviously, the wealth that is generated must be redistributed equitably in among different sections of the society. That redistributive justice is a political question that the political institutions have to handle. Second, social impact. See, the technologies also bring in changes in social institutions. For example, recent studies show that the gadgets developed for improving the or minimizing the drudgery in the household brings in changes in the relationship between wife and husband, parents and children, and similarly the television that's become a household necessity almost also changes the relations within the family. And I gave the example of banking system as part of our social institutions which create new technologies, and today's automation of banking operations is an important change that we see in the banking sector. Political, for example, distribution of power. I said politics has got to do with the distribution of power, and technologies can either increase the centralization of decision making or decentralize the decision making process, because all political power is used to make decisions. For example, today we hear that automation increases the decentralization of decision making process, and we have to see how this centralization of decision making process affects different sections of the society. Cultural changes, as I said, sometimes cultural conditions also can lead to new technologies and also bring about change in culture. Cultural changes include changes in attitudes and values, changes in meaning systems. For example, today most of the technological gadgets try to change our attitude towards life, the meaning system that we have about certain aspects. This change in the attitudes is brought about by using advertisements which try to rank the old way of doing things with a new way of doing things which are produced by these companies, and they always say that the older way of doing things is inferior to the new way of doing things. What it means is, if you use our product, you will be much better than what you were earlier. Okay? So, this is continuously done through advertisements. And one more very serious impact that they have on which are the more serious impacts that were noticed were on environment. See, our industrial technologies created pollution of water, air and soil, which are essentially the life supporting systems. And we see today that most of the cities, especially big cities, have serious air quality problems. They have soils which are very close to the rivers and rivulets, or polluted by industries which release their effluents into the river, and the water also is polluted because effluents are released into water. This requires intervention. This is an unjust situation. We must see how this unjust situation is addressed. We will examine these issues later on in the course. The emergence of modern science. Until the 16th century, knowledge or beliefs about nature and human conduct were based on theology, which I mentioned earlier, or religious knowledge in all societies, and theological knowledge is based on faith and revelation. According to the beliefs, the universe and human society is created by the God, and in theological system of knowledge, rationality is subordinated to theology. Then what is science? Science can be seen as a body of knowledge, concepts, models and theories. It is a method. There is a method by which you observe things and you justify what you observe, so that these observations are admitted to the body of knowledge. An institution, science is done according to certain norms, certain rules by men and women, and we will see as an institution it also has a function in terms of extending our knowledge, and it also is a force of production. In the sense, modern scientific knowledge enters our productive processes in agriculture, in industry, thus contributes to the increase in productivity and efficiency. For example, in making a motor car, you incorporate several scientific ideas in terms of, for example, laws of motion are incorporated, the science of materials is incorporated in building a motor car. And science also is a force that changes our consciousness. For example, the shift from geocentric theory of universe to heliocentric theory of universe was a shift in our consciousness, in the sense that today we believe that it is the sun which is in the center of the universe, not the earth, right. Similarly, the findings of Human Genome Project revealed that all human beings share the genome to the extent of 99.9%. 0.1% accounts for differences in our physical appearance and variations in other attributes. In the sense that today we know that the Human Genome Project made us conscious of the fact that most of the 99% of the human beings have a similar biological or genetic makeup. All the differences that we see today in terms of class, race and caste are socially produced. Before we move on to looking at the scientific method, we look at what do we mean by concepts, what do we mean by theories and so on. So, basically the question that is related to science is the question of knowledge. What is knowledge? Knowledge and information are the same or different. Information is concrete and accessible. It is accessible through word of mouth or written records, and information is used to act upon certain things. For example, if I want to travel by train, I look up the railway timetable to see at what time the train to the destination where I want to go starts, and then accordingly I plan my travel. Whereas knowledge is an abstraction. Abstraction means that we describe reality or part of reality. To describe, we need concepts. Concepts are shorthand descriptions of reality or part of reality. Without concepts, we cannot really describe. For example, if you use the term tree to describe the tree standing in front of our classroom, if the tree is not there in our vocabulary, we may spend several hours to describe the tree. Tree in this sense is a concept, it is an abstraction. However, in order to understand what the term tree means, we must share the meaning of the term tree. Without shared meanings of words and concepts, there will not be any interpersonal communication in human society. So, basically concepts are shorthand descriptions, and they are terms which are defined in a particular way that captures reality or part of reality. Scientific knowledge consists of concepts, theories and models, as I said earlier, and we will see what these are. What is a theory? A theory is a set of statements that are made in a conceptual language that provide a description of the phenomena. What is it and how is it? The question what is it provides answer to the nature of phenomena. To describe also we need concept, as I mentioned just now. How is it provides, or the question how is it provides the answer to the relationship that the phenomena has with other phenomena and the evolution of the relationship. Explanation regarding the why is it accounts for the interrelations between the phenomena under study and other phenomena, why they are related the way they are. Let me repeat it. Explanation regarding the phenomena, why is it, accounts for the interrelation between the phenomenon under study and other phenomena, why they are related the way they are. Explanation, in other words, is a statement about cause-effect relations between phenomena. There are two parts in explanation: that which has to be accounted for or explained, effect, consequent, independent variable, or okay, let me repeat. There are two parts in explanation: that which has to be accounted for or explained, which is effect, consequent, dependent variable, and that which accounts for or explains the cause, antecedent or independent variable or variables. Theories in social sciences account for the variation in the interrelations among social, cultural, economic and political phenomena across time and space. In the context of science, technology, society studies, one can see the context in which these studies emerged, as I just now discussed in the beginning, that what are the motivation in the Western societies to undertake science, technology, society studies, and what is the motivation of developing countries to encourage science and technology and consequently science, technology, society studies in the developing countries. So then we science, technology, society studies. There are three perspectives at least one can discern from the literature. One is science is independent of society. The divide between science and society is rigid, and science is autonomous, and science grows by replacement of ideas and theories. Second perspective is society directs science in terms of what should scientists do. This is also called externalist account of science. The earlier one, the first one is internalist account of science or internalist world of science. The second is what we call the external world of science influencing what science should do. Third perspective, which is more which is recognized today, which reflects the reality, is science and society interact with each other. The divide is like a permeable membrane. There is a traffic between the two worlds, the internal world of science and the external world. Okay, I mentioned earlier that the science, technology, society studies lie at the intersection of philosophy, sociology and history. Earlier philosophers dealt with epistemology, what counts as knowledge and how knowledge claims are justified, what method they use to justify knowledge. And then the second is the philosophers also gave a normative picture of what science is, what scientific activity is all about. History hitherto examined science in terms of succession of theories and facts. Sociology examined the social and moral norms that govern scientific community. All these three disciplines looked at internal view of internal world of science. As I said, these disciplines focused on the internal world of science initially. Internal world of science consists of, as I said, concepts, theories, models, social processes of knowledge production, functions without any interaction with the external world of science, comprising state, market and civil society or polity, economy and culture. That is, the internal world of science functions without any interaction with the external world of science. It is based on the belief that scientific knowledge is objective, rational, invariant and atemporal and also universal. All other forms of knowledge is culturally, socially conditioned. This view was popularized by what is called rationalist empiricist epistemology of science, and initially the philosopher said that which is universal and rational does not need any sociological explanations, because sociology is concerned with social science are concerned with the variations in the interrelations between phenomena across time and space. So what is positivist theory of knowledge? According to positivist theory, observations have primacy over theory. The task of scientists is to look for regularities in the occurrence of events and formulate laws. Related to this, as I said, is sociology of knowledge or sociology of science perspective, according to which sociology of knowledge, initially influenced by the empiricist rationalist theories of knowledge, considered scientific knowledge as universal, objective, atemporal and invariant. Karl Mannheim argued, Karl Mannheim is the founder of sociology of knowledge as an important area, argued that all knowledge except scientific knowledge is socially, culturally conditioned. And Merton looked at, Robert Merton, a pioneer in looking at the institution of science in the United States, looked at social moral norms that scientists follow, leaving the content of science as beyond the scope of sociology, as knowledge claims are evaluated by impersonal technical criteria of logic and evidence, and these criteria are universal. As sociology basically deals with variations in the social and cultural phenomena across time and space, it has no role in examining science, as scientific knowledge is rational and universal, as I mentioned just now. Now, what is empiricist method is also called an inductive method. Empiricist method is also called an inductive method, in the sense that we move from singular observations to make general statement through verification about phenomenon. First observe, verify the observations and make repeated observations and arrive at a general statement. In inductive method, as I said, as in positivist method, observations have primacy. One has to make unbiased objective observations, make observations in a wide variety of contexts, make as many observations as possible. These conditions are to be satisfied to make general statement. However, these are problematic conditions. How many observations are adequate before we make a general statement? In some cases, one observation is enough to make a general statement. For example, the consequence of dropping an atomic bomb or atomic explosion to human beings and environment. Sometimes, no matter how many observations one makes, it does not lead to conclusive general statement. Because of this, inductive generalizations are made in probabilistic terms, where probability ranges from 0 to 1. Deductive method is following the observations of René Descartes, which I mentioned earlier, who said that all human beings are endowed with ability of reasoning or logic. Moving from a general statement to a specific instance, the general statement can be a theory or a bold conjecture. Then we apply the theory to in a given context, in a given instance, and then draw conclusions on the basis of our general statement and the instance where we apply this. The deductive method is as follows. There is general statement, as I said, which can be a theory or a bold conjecture. Then you apply this conjecture or hypothesis to a singular instance and find out whether the singular instance supports your hypothesis or not, and then draw a conclusion. For example, a general statement, apply the bold conjecture or hypothesis singular instance and draw conclusions. For example, all cats have 4 legs. This one is a cat, hence this cat has 4 legs. Problem with deduction is a valid deductive argument may be empirically invalid or wrong. For example, all cats have 5 legs. This one is a cat, this cat has 5 legs, is a valid deductive argument. However, in real world we do not find a cat with 5 legs unless it is genetically deformed. That is, in science both inductive, deductive reasoning are used to generate knowledge. It is not, they are not mutually exclusive. Thank you. How much time did it take? Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So थोड़ा correction size में edit करना है.